everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we'll be exploring the fascinating world of classical music in animation.
It might seem like an odd pairing at first.
Yeah, cartoons and classical.
But trust me, it's a match made in entertainment heaven. We're going to be pulling insights from a fantastic podcast episode that really digs deep into this topic.
And I think you'll be surprised by just how intertwined these two worlds really are.
Oh, absolutely. The use of classical music in animation goes way back, almost at the very beginnings of animation itself.
So let's rewind the clock back to the 1920s and 30s, the golden age of those early cartoons like Disney's Silly Symphonies. Even back then, they were using classical music. Why do you think these early animators were drawn to this type of music?
Well, one big reason was purely practical.
Okay, practicality.
Animation was incredibly expensive back then. Every single frame had to be drawn by hand.
Oh, yeah, I can only imagine.
So studios were always looking for ways to cut costs. And classical music, much of which was in the public domain, was basically free to use.
Ah, so it was a budget-friendly option. Makes sense.
Exactly. But it wasn't just about saving money. Classical music also has this incredible power to evoke a wide range of emotions. Joy, excitements, sadness, suspense, you name it.
And it does it without needing any dialogue.
Precisely. Which was perfect for those early silent cartoons. They needed that music to really drive the story and set the mood.
It's like the music became the voice of the characters, conveying all those emotions that words couldn't. But it wasn't just about setting the mood right, it was also used to enhance the comedy.
Oh, absolutely. Think about those classic Warner Bros. Cartoons like Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies. They were masters at using classical music for comedic timing.
Ah, so that's why every time Bugs Bunny outwits Elmer Fudd, there's that perfectly timed musical cue. It's also carefully orchestrated.
Exactly. They were using a technique called Mickey Mousing, where the music is synchronized perfectly with the action on screen.
It's amazing how they could take these grand orchestral pieces and make them so funny.
And they were really clever about how they used those classical motifs, those little musical phrases that we all recognize.
Like the William Tell Overture for Chase Scene or the Rite of the Valkyries for, well, pretty much anything epic.
Exactly. And it's those familiar melodies that make it so funny. We recognize the music, but it's being used in this totally unexpected way.
Speaking of unexpected, I have to ask about Fantasia. It's practically synonymous with classical music and animation, but it wasn't an instant hit, was it?
You're right. When Fantasia premiered in 1940, it was actually a box office flop.
Really? That's so surprising. Why do you think that was?
Well, I think audiences back then weren't quite ready for such a bold and experimental film.
It was pretty avant-garde for its time.
Exactly. Some critics even called it pretentious. They just weren't used to seeing abstract animation paired with highbrow classical music.
So it was ahead of its time.
Exactly. And it wasn't until it was re-released years later that it finally gained its cult classic status.
So it took a while for people to catch on to its brilliance.
It did, but thankfully they eventually did. And it even inspired a sequel decades later with Fantasia 2000.
So clearly Disney saw the potential in this combination of classical music and animation.
Well, absolutely. And it wasn't just Disney. Other studios, like the ones behind Tom and Jerry, were also tapping into the power of classical music.
Those chase scenes just wouldn't be the same without the dramatic flair of, say, a Johann Strauss waltz or a Franz Liszt Rhapsody. I mean, can you imagine Tom and Jerry without those iconic musical cues?
I mean, those classic chase scenes are just pure genius. You have these crazy antics, characters defying gravity, objects flying everywhere, and the music just adds to that sense of chaos and excitement.
It's like the music is a character itself egging them on.
Exactly. It's that perfect blend of sight and sound that makes it so effective. And speaking of effective, let's talk about the educational aspect of all this.
Oh, yeah. I never thought about it that way, but you're right.
For many people, their first exposure to classical music wasn't in a stuffy concert hall.
Yeah, it was probably through cartoons.
Exactly. They might be watching Bugs Bunny or Tom and Jerry, laughing their heads off.
And unknowingly absorbing all these amazing classical melodies. It's like sneaking vegetables into a delicious smoothie.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
But it's true. These cartoons became these accidental gateways to classical music appreciation.
It's brilliant, really. But why does this pairing work so well? What is it about classical music that makes it such a good fit for animation?
Well, think about the emotional range of classical music. It can be grand and sweeping, like those epic battle scenes.
Right, those big dramatic moments.
But it can also be intimate and delicate, perfect for those quiet, introspective scenes.
Yeah, those heartwarming moments that tug at your heartstrings.
And this wide range of emotions mirrors the exaggerated world of animation perfectly. Whether it's a slapstick chase scene or a tender moment between characters, classical music can amplify those emotions and make them resonate even more.
It's like the music gives the animation an extra layer of depth.
Exactly. And another key factor is the timelessness of classical music. These are pieces that have stood the test of time. They're instantly recognizable, and they add a layer of sophistication and grandeur to even the silliest of cartoons.
It's like they have this treasure trove of musical masterpieces just waiting to be used. And speaking of treasures, let's not forget about those hidden gems out there, those lesser-known examples of classical music and animation that deserve a shout-out.
Ooh, I like where you're going with this.
So spill the beans. What are some of your favorite hidden gems?
Well, there's this fantastic Italian film called Allegro non troppo. It's kind of like a parody of Fantasia, with its own unique blend of surreal humor and stunning animation set to pieces by Debussy and Ravel.
Oh, that sounds intriguing. I'll have to check that out.
You definitely should. And for younger viewers, there's Classical Baby, a series that introduces toddlers to classical music and art through colorful and engaging animation.
So it's never too early to start fostering an appreciation for the arts.
Precisely.
Mm-hmm.
And the beauty is that this tradition of using classical music in animation is still going strong today. Even Disney is still releasing shorts that pair classical music with cutting-edge animation techniques.
So they're keeping the spirit of Fantasia alive for a whole new generation.
Exactly. It's amazing to see how this unlikely pairing has not only stood the test of time, but continues to evolve and inspire.
But what about the future? Where do you see this relationship between classical music and animation heading?
Ooh, that's a great question. Imagine immersive VR experiences where you could step inside a classical piece like Swan Lake and watch these animated swans gliding around you in perfect sync with the music.
Wow, that would be incredible. A whole new way to experience classical music.
Right. Or picture this, interactive streaming where viewers could choose which classical piece underscores a particular scene. It would be such a fun and engaging way to interact with the music and maybe even discover new favorites.
That's such a cool idea. It could turn watching cartoons into this interactive musical adventure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think we'll continue to see collaborations between animators and contemporary composers who are blending classical traditions with modern styles, creating something entirely new and fresh.
It's like a whole new world of animated Arias is waiting to be discovered. But let's bring it back down to earth for a moment.
Back to reality.
And talk about the nuts and bolts of how this magic happens. How do composers actually go about choosing the right piece of classical music for a particular scene?
That's a great question. It's a delicate balance of understanding the emotional nuances of both the music and the animation.
So it's not just about picking a pretty tune, it's about understanding how the music can actually enhance the storytelling.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Think about those classic Tom and Jerry chases. You have these crazy antics, characters defying gravity, objects being thrown around.
Pure mayhem.
Exactly. And the music just adds to the sense of chaos and excitement.
I've always loved how they use Strauss's Blue Danube Waltz for those scenes. It's so unexpected hearing this elegant waltz in the middle of all that mayhem, but it somehow works perfectly. It's like the music is almost mocking the characters, adding a layer of irony to the whole thing.
It is. It's that contrast that makes it so funny. And it also highlights the versatility of classical music. It can be serious and dramatic, but it can also be playful and ironic.
It's like they're saying, hey, even classical music can have a sense of humor.
Exactly. And another interesting thing is how classical music in animation can serve as a bridge between generations.
Yeah.
Think about it. Kids might be laughing at the slapstick humor, while adults are picking up on the musical references or appreciating the complexity of the composition.
It's a shared experience that goes beyond age.
It is. And it subtly exposes people to different cultures and musical styles.
That's a great point. It's like this Trojan horse for classical music appreciation. But let's not forget about the studio that really pioneered this whole concept, Disney. We talked about Fantasia earlier, but there's another Disney film that uses classical music in a really subtle but effective way, Ratatouille.
Oh, Ratatouille. Excellent choice. It's a perfect example of how classical music can be used to create a specific atmosphere and enhance the themes of a film.
Yeah. Ratatouille is set in Paris, and while it doesn't have big, bombastic classical pieces, it uses French classical music influences throughout the score to really capture the Parisian atmosphere and enhance the themes of food, artistry, and passion.
Exactly. It's more about creating a mood and ambiance rather than directly referencing specific pieces.
It's like the music becomes part of the scenery, transporting you right to the heart of Paris.
Exactly. And that brings us to another animation giant, Studio Ghibli.
Ah, Studio Ghibli. Their films are known for their breathtaking visuals and, of course, their incredible music.
Absolutely. Studio Ghibli films are known for their beautiful orchestral scores, often composed by Joe Hisaishi.
His music is just magical.
It is. While his music isn't strictly classical, it's heavily influenced by Western classical traditions and evokes those same feelings of grandeur and emotion. Think about the sweeping themes in Princess Mononoke or the whimsical melodies in Howl's Moving Castle.
It's like listening to a modern-day symphony.
Absolutely. It's a testament to how classical music continues to inspire and influence even contemporary composers. And what's fascinating is that even in a film like Shrek, which is known for its pop culture references and modern humor, you still find nods to classical music.
Like that scene where they use a bit of O Fortuna from Carl Orff's Carmina Burana to create a sense of impending doom before Shrek bursts out of the outhouse. It's hilarious.
It is. It's another example of how classical music can be used for comedic effect, especially when it's juxtaposed with modern elements. It's all about playing with those expectations and creating unexpected surprises for the audience.
It's like they're saying, hey, we know you recognize this, but we're going to twist it and have some fun with it.
Exactly. It keeps things fresh and engaging. I think that's one of the key reasons why this pairing of classical music and animation has been so successful for almost a century now. It's about finding that balance between tradition and innovation, familiarity and surprise.
It's incredible how something as seemingly disparate as cartoons and concertos can come together to create something truly special. We've explored everything from the early days of silly symphonies to the modern masterpieces of Studio Ghibli, and it's clear that classical music has played a vital role in shaping the world of animation.
It's added depth, humor, emotional resonance, and even a touch of educational value. Who knew that Bugs Bunny could be a gateway to opera, or that Tom and Jerry could introduce us to the world of waltzes and rhapsodies?
It's like they've been secretly nurturing our inner music lover all along.
Exactly. And as we look to the future, it's exciting to imagine the possibilities. We talked about immersive VR experiences, interactive streaming, and the rise of composers who are blending classical traditions with contemporary styles.
I can't wait to see how animators and musicians continue to push the boundaries and surprise us with new and innovative ways to use classical music.
But as we wrap up this deep dive, I'd like to leave you with a question. What personal connection do you have to classical music and animation?
Maybe there's a specific cartoon moment set to a classical piece that's etched in your memory, or perhaps this exploration has sparked a curiosity to learn more about a particular composer.
Whatever it is, hold on to that sense of wonder and continue exploring the intersection of these two seemingly disparate worlds.
Because you never know what hidden gems you might uncover.
Happy listening. It's amazing, isn't it? How these two worlds, animation and classical music, they just seem to complement each other so perfectly.
Yeah, it's like they bring out the best in each other.
Like peanut butter and jelly, or maybe like a...
Like a fine wine and a gourmet cheese.
Yes, exactly. They're both great on their own, but together they create something truly special.
And it's been happening for almost a century now. From those early silly symphonies all the way to modern masterpieces like Ratatouille and the films of Studio Ghibli.
It's a testament to the enduring power of both animation and classical music.
And it shows how they can transcend generations and cultures.
Absolutely. Think about it. A kid in Japan can watch Tom and Jerry and enjoy the same slapstick humor and musical cues as a kid in the United States.
Yeah, it's a universal language. And it's not just about entertainment either. We've talked about how these cartoons can actually introduce people to classical music, maybe even inspire them to learn more about it.
It's like planting a seed.
Yeah, a little seed of musical curiosity.
And who knows, maybe that seed will grow into a lifelong love of classical music.
That would be amazing.
It would. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about this whole subject. It's about more than just cartoons and music. It's about connecting with something larger than ourselves.
Yeah, something timeless and universal.
Exactly. And it's something that we can all share, regardless of age, background, or culture.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive.
Oh, already.
I know, time flies when you're having fun exploring the world of animation and classical music. But before we go, I want to thank you for joining us on this journey.
It's been a pleasure.
And to all of our listeners out there, we hope you've enjoyed this exploration as much as we have. And remember,
Keep listening.
and keep watching. Who knows what amazing combinations of sound and visuals are waiting to be discovered out
The
there.
possibilities are endless.